What makes indie games so appealing to me is that you never know what you're going to find next. Sometimes it is a genre-busting hit, sometimes it is a mediocre clone, and sometimes it is a big pile of crap. But then there are other times where you get something that's so experimental that it is just plain weird. A perfect example of such a developer would be Icepick Lodge, with games like Knock Knock and Pathologic. But the game we're looking at today may be experimental, but it isn't by Icepick Lodge. Instead, it is by a small and mostly unknown developer by the name of Xrrawva, and that game is ReYal. ReYal is a short experimental puzzle game developed and published by indie developer Xrrawva, who was previously known for titles such as All Haze Eve and Antimatter Elevator. It released on Steam May 30th, 2019 for PC and is priced at €1.59. ReYal is an intriguing puzzle game where you take on the role of a character who is playing a video game and you need to figure out why. It is typical Xrrawva design with basic and simple art and gameplay design, and despite there being no real threat, it still has its horror tones to it to create a sense of unease in a world that can't fully be understood. In ReYal you take on the role of a character who's playing a video game and that controls another character by interacting with various buttons. These buttons are left, right, up, down and interact. As you progress through the game, more characters become available that must be controlled by the previous up to a total of 5, each of these characters having their own visual design and environment. Essentially how it works is that you are controlling a character who controls another character, who then controls another, who then controls another, and that character controls the 5th character. Yeah, this was always going to be difficult. It is then with the 5th character that the key will appear, and then one by one you must get each of these characters to obtain their key and escape through the specific door until everyone has escaped. And that is basically the game in its entirety. In the beginning, things are pretty easy, but the more characters you have, the more complex it becomes, as you need to keep track of all the characters' movements, as they're linked to the previous. It is quite a basic but effective puzzle design, where you need to keep extremely focused in order to work it successfully. Lose your focus, and you will quickly begin to become confused with who is controlling who, and quite frankly, it is quite creative. Each of the characters is visually and environmentally unique. The first character is a type of ghost character that is what looks like from a virtual world. The second character is a man in a wheelchair in a pink walled room with cyan flooring and diamond symbols. The third is a demonic creature that resides in a cave, and so on and so forth. Each time a new character is introduced to the game, a brand new tone is added to the soundtrack that plays. A tone that is unique to that character, and when you have all 5 it feels like the soundtrack is complete. Then, as each of the characters escapes, the soundtrack once again begins to change one by one. After that there isn't a whole lot more to say about ReYal. It is a very typical game design of Xrrawva, in that there is some kind of meaning behind everything that is occurring in the game, but what that meaning is never revealed and left to the player's own interpretation. It is an interesting short puzzle game that lasts no more than about 30 minutes or so. If there was anything I could criticise, it would be that attempting to control 5 characters in this manner can be a bit overwhelming, especially if you begin to lose your focus a bit, which can happen when attempting to figure out exactly how everything works, as nothing is given away in ReYal, not to mention the pacing of the game slows way down. There's no denying this is not going to be a game for everyone. In fact, the only way I could recommend it is if you're looking for something that is purely experimental and extremely weird. Despite it having a price tag and it being extremely short, I've played far worse games that cost more. So if you enjoy video games that are just plain weird and don't make a whole lot of sense, then maybe ReYal is worth giving a go. The atmosphere to ReYal is almost indescribable, as there is so much going on all at once due to the different characters. You could say that each of the characters have an atmosphere of their very own, which then all merge together that creates this massive explosion that really gives the sensory a kick. There is a mixture of virtuality, positivity, retro, horror and an assortment of other tones going on here. In many ways it gives a sensory overload that causes discomfort, which I think is the entire point, to make you feel uneasy. It is after all a common and repeated style of atmosphere throughout all of Xrrawva's games. To summarise the atmosphere, it's one that is an incredible mixture that will give you a real audible sensory overload, which in return creates a sense of being somewhere very strange and very alien. And in many ways I love it, because there isn't quite anything else out there like it. I think it's safe to say that Xrrawva has done it again. They have created a game that is completely unique. Experimental, but definitely unique, and in many ways very unnerving in its own right. It certainly isn't a game that you will sit down and get hooked into playing. In many ways it isn't a video game as such, but rather what I refer to as an experience. And if a strange and very weird experience is what you're looking for, then I suggest giving ReYal a go. And with that, I give ReYal an 8 out of 10. While most journalists and content creators would simply turn their noses up at such titles like those that Xrrawva creates, I quite enjoy exploring them. But what I really want to see when it comes to Xrrawva's game design is all these neat little experiments turning into something big. And that is why I keep track of these small games of theirs, because I'm eagerly awaiting the next big masterpiece of video game weirdness. And if anyone is capable of it, Xrrawva is.